Ladies and gentlemen, the band is back. Along with Mark Ostrander, Grant Turner, I'm David Mirikitani. We are weighing in, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Marco, the polo looks good on you, buddy. How you doing, man?
Thanks. Good. Worked yesterday. I think I got most of the day off today, so that's kind of nice.
GT, I complimented Mark, and he was absolutely shocked.
I mean, that's the great relationship that we all have. It's like, wait a second, where is it going to come from next?
Right. Where's the hammer coming? So we were talking off air about GT making fun of my font size on my text messages. And then now I saw one worse than mine. And now he's taking credit for actually making me aware of that. But that's, like you said, that's your real friendships right there. So anyway, lots to get to. Let's start out with good news. U20s. Mark told me one day he came back from work, I think like at 3 a.m, and just started watching wrestling till 6. So Mark, you're a god for doing that. Let's start with you. You and me actually watched some of it while on the phone together a couple times. Yep. What are your thoughts on the under 20 boys? Let's go big picture. We'll get under 20 boys team play second as a team. We'll get into it with GT specific placings and results and how we should feel about it. The under 20, I don't know if we call them women or ladies or girls at this point, but that is going on now, and Greco will be going on after. We will cover those results next week. So we're not trying to give one team more coverage than the other, just timing wise. We're recording this on 10 a.m. on Thursday morning. So Marco, thoughts?
Well, I guess what impressed me the most, David, was how young we were. I think we only had 2 that will not be qualified to wrestle in the U20s next year, that out of the 10 weights. So that's pretty impressive. I thought the young kids did a good job. I know there's, sometimes it looked like we were boys out there wrestling men, especially at heavyweight, obviously, against Iran.
Yeah.
That guy is a beast. That guy is so big. And I know Feldman's a stud. And he got I hated watching it. It was just so hard to watch. I've never seen anything like that. So, but overall, I thought, they did a phenomenal job. I think we have a lot of work to do at certain weights, but I think it's a learning curve for them. This is a lot of time. Most of these kids, this is the first time they've ever been in a world tournament. So, I thought they represented the United States really, really well. Grant, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this group, if you look up and down the roster, all the way from the very, very bottom to the very, very top, those guys are some hitters. But yeah, to your point, Mark, like having a lot of that maybe team back for a repeat run at a U20 world title, getting second this year. Just looking at kind of the results, one of the guys that probably had, out of all of them, the worst showing, Alex Facundo.
Yeah.
I would have lost a lot of money, and Vegas would have taken me for a lot on that gentleman not doing better than what he did. Now, once again, he ended up wrestling a gentleman from Iran first round. Once again, global power within men's freestyle, but you look at some of the other guys' results, this is still the world tournament, right? So like this is the world championships. This is the best of the best from all over the entire world for their age category. And you're like, well, how can somebody beat up on Feldman that bad? He's that's the best guy. That guy's legit. But we've seen such a great results collectively for USA Wrestling this year. The future's bright on all styles. Just, we're highlighting men's freestyle currently, but women's freestyle and Greco it's been a really good year for USA Wrestling.
So let's address a couple things. GT, let's do your obligatory James Green effect. Go ahead.
Yeah, James Green bringing home another trophy. It's a carry on for him every time that he goes overseas. So super pumped for James. Once again, another great run for him and USA Wrestling's developmental staff. But yeah, man, he's just bringing home hardware every single time he can.
So I will say this. Somebody asked me the other day about the chemistry of our podcast, and I said, Mark and I agreed we should bring Grant on, especially for the summer months because of his knowledge. And Mark, you and I actually talked about this, like, hey, we need somebody to do some of the heavy lifting. And there's some specific, besides the fact we all actually like each other, but Mark brought up something to me, GT, and I'm very curious your thoughts on this. He said, it seemed like we hit Iran or however you want to say it, a ton in the first round. And he said, and if I'm misquoting you, Mark, please, but he goes, these are supposedly random draws. But, it's kind of like the NBA draft where the ball was frozen. So, the Knicks were going to get Patrick Ewing kind of thing. Are these really random? Are these not random? Because the mathematical odds of two countries hitting that often in round one, like talk about making or losing money in Vegas. If you'd made that bet on how many first rounders we had versus Iran, you'd have made up for your Facundo money really quickly.
That's wild to me. Just to go through the list, so we know at 57 kg, Volk had Iran first round.
Okay.
Buzakis wrestled Iran probably, I think, in the semis. So once again, still had to wrestle him.
Mm-hmm.
65, Cornella, Iran in the quarters. Messenbrink.
Mm-hmm.
Slipped through, didn't have to wrestle the Iranian.
There you go.
That's because the Iranian got beat, though, right, Grant? He was on our side.
Correct. He just didn't run into him regardless. Yes. Placing match, whatever. Just never got a chance to see him. Facundo, first round. Braden Thompson, first round. Bennett Berge didn't get a chance to wrestle the gentleman from Iran. Jackson Smith, same thing. No Iranian. Ben Cooter, monster. Didn't get a chance to wrestle the Iranian. And then
no, he did. He beat that guy 17-14, didn't he?
No, Georgian. The Iranian got beat.
Oh, that was the Georgian. Okay.
That was the Georgian. And then Feldman. So out of that, 7 out of the 10.
But 3 first rounders, just 3 first rounders. And if you take how many countries are there and you
crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple stories here. I'm just going to very selfishly shout out to Mitch Messenbrink. Mitch Messenbrink's father is John Messenbrink. John runs the Askren Wrestling Academy along with Ben and Max Askren. John wrestled for my dad at Merrimack when I was in high school, was an unbelievable training partner. He's a great story, the father is, about overcoming. Like his senior year, he had like 11 losses in high school, took 4th in Missouri, lost like 9 or 10 matches to the top 3 guys at state, like kept hitting them duels, district, and wrestled well for us, went to Drake when they had the Division I program and just kept getting better. And he's got a great mind for the sport. Super cool just to see somebody that we, as our family loves, do so well. I texted Doug Paulson after Volk won. And GT, talk a little bit about the Pinnacle Wrestling Club's performance here so far.
Yeah, they ended up having, I believe, 3 world medalists as far as a club is concerned.
Yeah.
And once again, I think to Mark's point, I think he had made it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how I believe it was like Iowa USA Wrestling ended up winning, and it was all coming from kind of like Seabolt and big game clubs. Is that these clubs and these club coaches are doing such a great job of Olympic development, and to highlight Pinnacle with what their results have been has just been outstanding. Making sure that those kids have that exposure at the U15, U20, U23 level, going and wrestling people from other countries and getting that exposure to make world teams. So, also the Askren Wrestling Academy putting guys on the teams, the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club with their collegiate. It's fun to watch, but I think for that point of Pinnacle is, they're pumping out world medalists almost every year at some age category.
I want to go to Mark. I got a chance to visit Pinnacle because of you and Luke Becker when we were going to set up for the Minnesota Border Brawl, and got to go in the room. And one of the things that these rooms do really well, like my dad was not a big sizzle guy. He was all steak, was put up these columns of people that have won different things, and the number of world team members, Pan American team members, world team medalists, it's sort of implied when you look at that wall, like who's next, right? Like who's next? Like we're putting together the border brawl right now. We're looked together. We had 28 medals / stop signs at Fargo this year alone. And we're not coaching them, so it's totally different. But just, do you want to be a part of this, and who's next? So, Mark, you mentioned something to me when we were talking. And again, if I'm misquoting, you talked about how in a couple of those, let's take the Keeter match against the Georgian. Is that what it was? Where he was down 8-0?
Yep.
Is it the right country? I don't want to miss. Okay. And ends up winning like 17-14, which somebody very acutely pointed out was a really good football score, won by a field goal. It feels like America is very good at running people down. That we really trust our cardio. We rely on our cardio. And, Mark, like your guys, I mean, I think that in general, the state of Iowa, I'd say Grandview, Iowa Central, and you were there, those kids were known, they were / are known for being tough. Like you're going to have to go all 3 periods. And if you got a small lead and you're going to try to milk it, you're probably going to lose. Like, so is a guy that coached guys to be like that, as GT is a guy that's coaching guys to be like that. How do you see that? And then I'm going to tell you guys something else that I was told. Like, how do you see that?
Well, I just think that's kind of the way it's always been around here. It's just kind of, it's ingrained because parents usually, kids that have wrestled, their kids have wrestled, and that's just kind of how it's been ingrained. I don't think it goes to the extreme that Siebel went through with his, dad having the gym and training 3 times a day and doing that and being homeschooled. That may be a little different than what, a lot of people are used to, but it's kind of ingrained. I heard that Keeter had like 6 workouts this summer getting ready for the Worlds. That's it.
6?
6. Because he's been doing
football.
He's been doing football.
I'm just making sure people don't think he was like laying by the pool.
No, he was trying to fit things in, but he got 6 quality workouts in, and he was able to go there and do what he did. But he's a little different than most kids. He's got that body frame. He's, probably 4 or 5 inches taller than everybody he's wrestling. They were trying to turn him with gut wrenches, and he has learned how to use his length to stop that move and then turn and then get into a position where he was using a lot of folk style wrestling on top, which I think benefits the United States. We always talked about, well, these other countries, all they do is wrestle freestyle. That's why they're so much better than the United States. But actually the folk style, you're seeing it with the younger kids, they use a lot of the things that these international kids have never seen. If you saw that reverse cradle that Busakas hit against that kid, took him the wrong way. They were talking about it. That kid's probably never been in that position before, and he says, there's no way he's going to take me this way, and he did. And ended up actually pinning the guy, and he was down 6 or 8 to nothing when he did it.
Keegan O'Toole flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah, I think, that bar arm that Keeter used in the finals to pin the kid, and that was it was a competitive match at the beginning. We got taken down. The guy went to try to turn us, and he stepped over the top of it and then started doing a beret of things to him on top, and then finally ended up just doing a bar arm in the far half and turning the guy over and pinning him. That's not something they see very often. They're used to guys go right to an ankle lace or right to a gut wrench, and that's all they do. All of a sudden, you got your arm here, and guys grabbing your head here, and he's running that corner, and these guys are saying, what in the hell's going on? It makes a difference. So
it's true. I think it's true. Just a quick, and then GT, I want to get I think Ben Keeter's guy in the final was pinned for about 14 seconds before they called it. Granted, I only had one view at it. We've all been coaching, yelling he's pinned, when if you're not, you're like, why are those guys yelling that? But it did look like he was pinned. So, Grant, you literally talk to these federations. You're doing uniform design, but it's more than that. You have a relationship with these guys. I was at like a sort of a world, like the USA people at the highest level were saying that in a lot of countries, they look at wrestling as a skill sport, and that there is no shame in losing if you lose on cardio. That's how they look at it. but that if you lose on skill, that's the shame in it. So they spend so much time working on skill, and they don't, it's like probably the equivalent of more play wrestling and drilling and not doing a lot of live, which is obviously, as we all know as coaches, builds up a whole different set of cardio. And, I think most coaches agree you got to do a little bit of everything, and there's peaking and training cycles and all that. Is there as a guy that talks to these guys and also probably watches more of these international matches over the last 5 years than maybe Mark and I combined, is there any truth to that?
Well, I think there's always stylistic interpretations of even folk style wrestling, even in the United States. Like, people want to wrestle live, or even like top, bottom, more throws, wrestling on our feet. I mean, once again, we've all been coached by different people, and we've all have our own interpretation of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
I think internationally, I think it's the exact same equivalent of maybe more technique, more positioning, more wrestle from the position rather than being it like a technique based, like setups and things of that nature, or flowing from one thing to another. But it just really depends. I mean, it depends on each coach from each region. And I would say that probably the best example of this would probably be the Japanese women. They are very fundamentally sound, very, like very basic techniques, basic positioning first type attacks. And they're always in good position. They're always in good shape. Now, once again, technique can vary from athlete to athlete because of their skill sets, but you have a very fundamental base of what that organization and that country and that particular style of wrestling looks like. And you could watch film from the past 3 Olympics, and it'd be very similar technique-wise for everybody from Japan wrestling.
Yeah.
So I think that's also the culture that they've built for themselves within their technique and how they achieve how great they've been over the past so long. But I think that's also their look upon it.
The point you brought up about the Japanese is really well taken. Like Cornell Robinson, who used to coach here in St. Louis, is now the SEM coach and is on a bunch of the age group world team coaching staff, said, we were in Iowa City. It'd have to have been like in 2017, whenever the World Cup was there. You might know that. You guys might know that year, but we were there, and he was telling me that he was watching the other countries warm up, and that like the Japanese warm-ups are very flowy and smooth. And then he said like the Cuban warm-ups are very explosive, like there's a lot of, standing, more or less standing still, not a lot of wasted motion, and then just blow through guys. So I just think it's important. I can tell you guys this, and I'm sure if we're honest with each other, we've been on both sides of this. I'm sure we've all wrestled somebody that we were maybe better than, but we knew was going to try to run us down. Like, we better get a big lead. And we've also wrestled guys that were maybe better than us. I know I've certainly wrestled a lot of guys better than me, but I'm like, if I can hang around, I think I can get them tired. And so to me, cardio is another form of skill, because if you have to get a big lead on me, that actually causes stress. And every time there's a scramble and nobody scores, that's the advantage to the person in better shape. So I think we all think that, but I think it's just something that would be one of the counter arguments to that cardio is not skill. Like, what is a skill? And it's certainly a part of the mindset of how you wrestle. And Mark, to go back to what you said about Keeter, about stepping over guts or countering them or stuff like that, the Keeter match, for people that haven't seen it, they should go watch it. And I want to make sure I'm right, but he was down like 8-0, and not the final. The final, he got taken down and then just worked that guy. But the match that he won 17-14, he was down semi. He was down 8-0 in like 30 seconds, like somewhere between 20 and 40 seconds, and he went out of bounds, and you could see him like, I guess I'm interpreting, but like, man, I wasn't expecting this. And he's really smart. Like, he came back to the middle really slow, which is not what Americans do. He looked over at his corner. I think those guys were like, you're good, you're good. And he did something. He didn't do something that was really smart. He didn't just dive in on a shot. Like, Mark, you and I have talked about, maybe the knock on Keeter is he's super good in go behinds and stuff like that, but maybe he doesn't have a ton of his own offense right now, which he'll generate. I mean, he'll figure that out. You go to Iowa, they're pretty good at getting the legs, so probably going to figure it out. But he didn't lose his composure. And I think that's something that cannot be underestimated in that scenario. You know, like I go back to the 2016 trials, and I think we were all there. We, you know, certainly we weren't as good of friends as we are now, but Pico was losing 8-0 to Jason Ness in the first round. And something happened, or it was a move that took it from 7-9, and his corner threw a brick. And he kicked the brick back because if they lost the brick, the match was over. And then he came back and beat him 19-9. So I just want to say shout out to Ben Keeter for having the composure to kind of just not give the match away. I think it goes without saying his cardio and his toughness and everything else to come back and come down 8-0 to win 17-14 is great. And the other thing that I'm just a sucker for this, it was so cool to watch and hear the celebrations because there's not a lot of fans there. So, like, you could hear, like, Brandon Paulson saying to Volk, like, let's go, world champion. You know, like you could hear those guys saying the let's goes after they won their matches. And we've all coached guys that have won big things. I don't know about you guys, but that kind of, you know, gave me goosebumps and, you know, raised the hair on the back of my neck.
I agree.
So the other thing, and just a sidebar, Volk's going to Wyoming. This might be the most high profile recruit they've had in a long time, right? GT?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say high profile, but like as a world champion, like age category world champ. I mean, there's tons of guys that probably have, I mean, once again, I don't know the Wyoming wrestling history as probably as most of anybody is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a huge recruit and that's a huge win for Branch and his staff.
Yeah. And they've got a relationship up there in Minnesota, and it's a cool story. I got to talk to Doug Paulson about it at Junior Duels. Any other final thoughts from either of you guys on U20s, knowing we'll circle back next week to the women's and do the Greco? Marco, anything else?
No, I was just proud of the way they handled themselves. I'm really happy for James Green, obviously. I thought he's such a class act, and I think the kids really appreciate having him in their corner. And a lot of these kids, they didn't have their club coaches there. You know, there were some there, but a lot of them didn't. I know Keeter didn't. And to see him listening to James Green and then running over there and giving him a big hug, you know, because he doesn't know James that well. James, you know, is fairly new on the scene. So I thought that was really cool. So he's built a relationship with James, because you get in that situation, you have to trust the people when you're out there and telling you what to do. And so that's kind of cool.
I think GT could probably give a song and verse on how good James Green is at quickly developing, trusting relationships. And I think that's a great insight by you, Mark, that when these guys don't have their, and I don't mean to minimize it, but their security blanket, the person they're going to talk to, like Mitch Messenbrink had his dad there, who's also his club coach. But like you said, a bunch of them didn't. And I bet you James Green is smart enough to know I need to probably spend more time with Ben Keeter than Mitch Messenbrink because John's here. You know, and I'm like, hey, I got you. Tell me what you like to do in these situations. I believe in you. You know, whatever those things are. So let's talk a little bit about the final wrestle-off for the women's teams. Kayla Miracle gets it done. 3 matches, pretty interesting. She gets tacked. She gets a tack. And then she's losing 3-1 with a minute left. Gets in on a leg. Comes up. We call it gets big, you know. And Rogers Page, which like she tries to hop over and gets elevated from feet to back for 4 and really almost took herself out of the match. I got a chance to talk to one of the coaches from Miracle's Corner, but what were your guys' impressions before I kind of gave you theirs? Because I thought theirs was really interesting. GT?
I mean, I think it was a for that match to go 3 matches is very, once again, this shows the depth of that weight class as well. Like, you know, Kayla Miracle, you know, Olympic silver medalist, and, you know, basically getting in a match where she gets tacked, it raises your eyebrows a little bit and be like, oh my goodness. Like, that just shows you like how razor sharp these matches are together. But I mean, I think with Kayla's performance and kind of staying on her trajectory, it's a good match for Kayla to have domestically. And, you know, I think it's just one more step for her in like her lineage of kind of being the mainstay at that weight for so long as of now.
Yeah. Marco?
Yeah, I was happy for her because first time I ever met her was at D1 Nationals when they had that big event there. And, you know, I got a chance to sit down and talk to her because, you know, Pritz was there and Pritz was talking about the move that Stevie Williams kind of developed. And I had coached Stevie. And so I was talking to her about that. And she loved the move. She wanted to try it. And they keep yelling at her, don't do it, because they want her to actually spend a lot more time doing it instead of doing it, you know, in a match. So, you know, I was really happy for her. But like Grant said, and I think, Grant, you're right, we're really competitive at a lot of weights in the United States. I mean, you would think a world silver medalist and as popular and as good as she's been for the last 4, 5, 6 years, that somebody can come out there and tech her is just unbelievable. So, you know, kudos to women's wrestling in the United States right now.
Well,
we're not quite to Japan yet, but we're getting close.
Technically, Kayla Miracle was losing in that entire series till a minute left.
Yep.
You know, because she had to win the second match. So I think most people know Pritz and I are friends. So I texted Pritz afterwards and just said, hey, congrats. I said, you're going to have to tell me, you know, when you get time, you're going to have to tell me what you said to her, you know, because you go from minus tech to plus tech, or they weren't shutouts, so we can't say 10 rip, which is, I'm trying to be cool like that, but I don't think we can do that. And so he called me and he goes, I did the one thing coaches don't do enough of. I go, what's that? He goes, I didn't say anything. I just listened. I said, okay. So he said they came back and she said she was scared to move because of her, you know, she had a knee injury and, you know, they were recovering from it. And he goes, Kayla, we twisted it this way. We twisted it that way. We did all these things. We made sure you were ready. You just have to believe in yourself. And, you know, then she wrestled really well the second match. And obviously Nittany Lion Wrestling Club's pretty good at making adjustments, you know, so they made adjustments in the third match. And he also said something. He goes, it's very interesting. He goes, there's a lot of positions where you tell your kid to just keep wrestling. And he goes, but that girl probably should have just stepped out, just given us a 1. He goes, because that doesn't change anything. We need a 2 to win still. He goes, or even a 2, and we're winning, but we're only winning on criteria. Because once she gets a 4, she's up 5-3. She's really up 6-3. Because you know, a 2 does people get mixed up. Last point is the last criteria, not the first criteria. You know, which we all know now. Mark was actually explaining scoring to me the other day, GT, on the phone. It was awesome. He was on it. So,
and I'm explaining it to David.
I'm like, you need to jump in the play-by-play booth, brother, with me. Let's get it. Let's get it. So, but congratulations to Kayla. I think that puts 3 girls from Sunkissed Kids, or 3 women, along with Parrish and Helen. So really impressive by them. And they have an alternate, obviously, in Forest. So good for them. Okay. Big news. HBCU, which stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Kenny Monday, the first African-American Olympic gold medal winner for the United States, has been named the head coach at Morgan State University. They start in 23-24, so he's got a year to recruit. He's got a year to put a coaching staff together. They have endowed that program. Big shout out to Mike Novogratz, Jahi Jones, those guys, Kerry McCoy, who have been doing a lot of heavy lifting. Big splash. Mark, you are 0-1 against Kenny Monday, as are probably a lot of people. So, but that's such a great story. But I will let you go first as his sort of contemporary, age-wise. What do you think?
Well, we had talked about this earlier. We were texting when we found out, and I had said something that this is a real head scratcher to me because, and it's not because of who Kenny Monday is, because one of the greatest American wrestlers we've ever had. And it's not where he's going to coach, because it's a good fit for him. I've just never seen somebody at the age of, and I'm not 100% sure how old he is, but I know I wrestled him when I was a freshman. So I'm going to guess he's within a year of me. So he's probably 60, 61, maybe 62. I'm not sure. But to start as a head coach of a college, and basically, he's coached high school, he's coached clubs, but to be a head college coach.
He's been an assistant college coach too, and he's been on the USA Wrestling coaching staff. Go ahead.
Yes, but being a head college coach at that age was like, what are you doing? I mean, we know how hard this sport is. And I guess it's different now because you can bring in top-notch assistant coaches to train and do those things. But back when I was coaching, Grant, I was on the mat every day for, 2-3 hours. I was actually wrestling every day because I wanted to teach. I wanted to show technique. And the only way to show technique is to actually do it to the kids so they get a feel for what it is, because it's kind of hard to teach something if they don't understand what it's supposed to feel like when it's being done to you. And then it maybe clicks in their head, oh, that's what it's like. Because when my partner was doing it, I didn't feel the pressure here. And I don't know how he's going to take me down with it. But then when you do it right, you feel the pressure. You feel where you're losing your balance, whatever it is. So I thought that was kind of odd, but I think it's a great hire for him. I think he's going to do a good job. It just kind of shocked me that somebody would be his head coaching job right at that age. So,
GT.
Yeah, I mean, I think, also when you're 60 something else, there's assistant coaches out there, Mark. You don't need to be on the mat every day, brother.
I just said that, but back then,
I know.
Increase your font size and keep it.
I'm just poking fun. Now, once again, I think Kenny Monday, as far as a splash hire for HBCU, reinstating a program after 25 years, go get the first ever African-American Olympic gold medalist.
Yep.
Could not have been a bigger splash for the hiring process. Now, Kenny gets to build his staff. And I'm very excited about who is going to go on that journey with him as a staff to resurrect that program from 25 years ago to now, getting going again. I think it'll be very interesting to see the landscape of collegiate wrestling with an HBCU university in the fold, and being able to have a program return, because I remember when Fresno State came back and how much, the alumni and the fan base and everybody got behind that. I'm just excited for that journey for that fan base and that university to feel that love and feel that, hey, we made the right decision. This program's back. We're recruiting well. And once again, giving those guys time to recruit and build that program up. I'm super excited for it. I think it's a huge win for collegiate wrestling. I think once again, college wrestling's tough, Mark. It's absolutely, you're 1,000% correct. Now, guess what? Now you get to go recruit against Tom Ryan, Brandon Agam, Mark Branch, Tom Brands, John Smith, Cale Sanderson, Coleman Scott. Hey, you go make your hay now. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm super excited for Kenny. Once again, can't say it enough. Great to have that program back.
I'm going to say a couple of obvious things. Number one, anytime we're adding a Division I wrestling program, period, that's great. Number two, anytime we're supporting minorities in our sport, that's great. Number three, GT's 10,000% right about the splash higher part of this for sure. I think everything I agree with. And I'll just compound on what you guys said. When you build a staff, I think there's a lot of people in wrestling that just want to teach technique, and they want to wrestle and they want to wear a suit on Saturday night. They don't want to recruit. They don't want to fundraise. They don't want to build relationships. They don't even want to put a schedule together. Maybe they want to spend all their money right away. Like we talked to Neil Ersman when they started at Little Rock, and you can't just go spend your 9.9 the first year, because now you're stuck. You could actually screw up your APR. You could literally make your entire team ineligible. There's a lot of things that are the business, sort of almost the fantasy football side of it, that people are unaware of. And so I will just reiterate what you guys are saying. It's super important to surround yourself with people that want to do the stuff that you don't want to do. I think that's, and are good at the stuff that you don't want to do. Like for me, when I run Border Brawl, like I talked to Grant Turner, the uniforms are taken care of. That's it. And you have to sort of delegate, and you try to have, you know, like in my event, I try to have 50 people I'm delegating to. Like Lori May is our announcer. I just give her the script. She does it. She's awesome. You know, you get two good referees. You don't teach them the rules, etc. So it's very important that they get somebody that wants to recruit. And GT, you said it right. You got to recruit against all these other people, but they have a unique niche, right? Like I remember Morgan State back when Ricky Stewart was wrestling. I was a kid. He beat a guy from Morgan State in the finals because he had the same headgear that I started out with. And I just remembered that because I thought it was a cool headgear. My dad went and found me one. So if I would guess that 99% of that team is going to be African-American. But if you're an African-American and a good wrestler, you have a chance to wrestle for a legend, and you have a chance to be maybe not the first, but the first and forever, to be an All-American, to be a national qualifier, to be a national champion. And there's two kind of kids, basically. There's kids that say, I want to go to a place that's proven they can do it over and over and over. And then there's a few kids like, I think I'm so good I can go do it where they haven't done it. I mean, I was told specifically by one member of the Mizzou coaching staff that it was down to Mizzou and Wisconsin for Ben Askren. And the Wisconsin staff said, you can't go to Mizzou. They've never won anything. And they said that's actually what pushed him to go there. He's like, well, I'll prove you wrong. And not only did Ben Askren put Mizzou on the map, he recruited Matt Pell. And he's running this academy now. And Mizzou's getting more good kids out of Wisconsin than Wisconsin is, you know, especially out of that camp, out of that particular club. So you never know the domino effect of these relationships. Super excited for Kenny. I've known him since I was a kid, and you know, Kenny's very well liked. So I think he'll be able to sort of catch up to speed on like, hey, what exactly am I dealing with NIL? He can talk to people. I mean, the Oklahoma State coaching tree is big. Somebody put on social media that of the African-American coaches, over 50% of them come from Oklahoma State with Pendleton, Glenn Lanham, and now Kenny. So shout out to those guys for inclusion, promotion, whatever the right term for that is. So last subject, Brody Teske goes from UNI to Iowa. I will go first and then set the table for you guys. There's sort of two ways to interpret this for Iowa. Number one is, you know, Iowa maybe didn't even reach out to him, whatever, but you're going to take a guy that was a 4-time state champ, 2-time national qualifier, I think at least around a 12 one-time Big 12 champion. Also, you know, there's sort of a plus minus, you know, it strengthens Iowa, it depletes UNI. Second side of this is if Spencer Lee's not ready, you got a pretty good 125 pounder in waiting, because Ayala, from everything Mark has told me, is probably going to redshirt this year based on injury. So that's a very nice sort of parachute backup plan, you know, if that's the case. So Mark, I've talked to you about this more, so I'll let you go first. Thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Brody. This is what he wants to do. He worked really hard to get his degree this summer. I had heard this earlier this summer that he was planning on graduating during the summer, get all his classes done, so he could actually look at options, because and it's nothing against UNI. I think he even made a statement that he loved UNI. He loves the coaching staff. He really enjoyed his time there, but he has plans that he didn't see himself being able to accomplish there. And I think a lot of that had to do with, you know, workout partners. Now, they did bring in Corey Land coming in this year, who's going to be a stud for UNI. But, I mean, besides that, you know, a couple other kids have left UNI. So I think he really wanted a training room. And I know he did a lot of camps this year with Romeo Bravo Young. They spent a lot of time this summer traveling, doing camps together. And I think it really made him want to be in a room to train and get better and better, because he's got 2 years left. He really wants to try to do something, and he feels like this may be his best move. So, where he's going to end up at Iowa, I heard maybe he wants to go 33. So there's a chance he could wrestle at 33. Is Spencer 100%? Will he be 90%? I'm not even sure Iowa knows right now, where he's going to end up. They may not even think about it until, December, and then start doing things and saying, I don't know if we're ready. I don't know if we'll be ready in March, and we're not going to put you out there unless we know you're capable of, being able to accomplish your dreams. So who knows? I have no idea what direction they're going to go, but I know he'll be a good addition to the program. He's going to be back with Drake Ayala, who he wrestled with in high school. Drew Bennett's there still. So they've got kids from the Fort Dodge area that he knows and respects, and I think he'll be a good addition to the team. If nothing else, it brings in another level of depth in that room to get better.
Yeah, well, it seems like Iowa's getting everybody they want in recruiting, so GT, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, anytime you can have a Big 12 champion added to your roster, and regardless of whatever weight class he's in, adds a lot of prowess to whatever weight class that he would end up going. So I think, Brody's earned his stripes with his career up until this point, and now he's going to a new university and going to make his splash at the University of Iowa however he can, because that's the type of kid he is. So if they need him to go wrestle 25, he'll wrestle 25. They need to wrestle 33 in a duel, he'll go wrestle 33 in a duel. Whatever they want to be able to have out of him, I think he's one of those guys that is a good teammate in that regard. I just think there's a lot of questions with the Iowa lineup. I think as we talk about the collegiate landscape is, who's going to be at what weight, how is, kind of the newer people that are going to step up for that university and their lineup in general, because they had, this group that had been there for, 15 to 20 years. And it's like, hey, Marinelli was there for 8 years. Kemmerer was there for 8 years.
Kemmerer's a provost now, yeah.
Right, exactly. I think he owns an apartment building at this point.
He's renting condos out, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, but when you have that, and once again, Penn State has had this issue as well. And once again, how many years did David Taylor and Ed Ruth? It's like I felt that they went to college for 7 years. I felt like they were around for that long, and you're like, oh well, crap, they're still there. Yeah. So I think as those pieces move and guys move on, and then you integrate new guys into the lineup, and then they prove themselves, it's really cool to see. So whether or not Spencer's healthy or not, Brody Teske's right there. Ayala, if he gets healthy, he's right there. Schriever at 33, whatever you guys want to be able to discuss. I think it just adds depth to your room, and then the opportunities come as they come.
Yeah, it feels like Iowa's set in like 6 weights, like Woods at 41, and then Kennedy, Assad, Brands, Warner, Cassiope, the last 5 weights. And then, 49, 57 feels like it's a little bit in the air. And obviously now 25 and 33 are a little bit up in the air. But especially at 25 and 33, it feels like they have first world problems. Which really two really good guys are we going to wrestle out of this group of 4 or 5?
David, I don't think Iowa has a question of 49. It's going to be Murin.
Okay, you're right. I forgot he's back. Okay, yeah. So 57 in the first 2 weights. No, good point. Okay. A couple quick points. One, you mentioned Teske being very thankful, and Penn State didn't work out for him, and UNI was a great landing place for him, and he refound his love for wrestling. The other thing that you mentioned, Mark, but I think we need to sort of explain the technicality of it. There's a penalty to go to 3-4 year schools. You're supposed to sit out a year. The way to get around that is to graduate.
Yep.
Okay. So he graduated with the sole, I'm not saying sole purpose, but a very tangible aspect of that is, okay, now I can transfer and not have to sit out a year. So, that rule is good. We could get into a whole speech, which you don't have time for, about the free market and kids being able to follow their worth and all this other stuff. But it does make things really interesting. So, and, I I think if Iowa could do it differently, like with Spencer last year, they probably just never would have wrestled him at all. And, given Ayala the whole year to have a running start at it. Ayala had some really good wins, but, at times wrestled like a really good freshman, and then was banged up too. So if he gets a chance to heal this year, they got Jessaroga coming in, they got Schriever there. I mean, they got really good problems, and Spencer technically probably has a medical redshirt, and a regular redshirt. He's still got 1 year left to do something with. So he could sit this year. I think I've talked to both you guys off the air. It seems like it might be ideal for him to not wrestle this year and go right into the Olympic year. We've seen a lot of people make the team like that, like Burrows, Jaden, people like that. So next week, we will talk about the rest of the U20s. Real quick, we just want to mention there was something on social that said AJ Ferrari had been charged with something else. The charge was eliminated the same day. The original charges are still out there, but sometimes, I think I said to you guys off the air, sometimes the headline is bigger than the retraction. And so we just don't want to, and I'm glad I actually called a couple lawyer friends of mine. They're like, it came down and this is what these charges mean. So we don't want to be something that's piling onto somebody, especially if it's inaccurate. If it's fair, it is what it is. We don't deal it with any joy or malice either way, but we definitely want to try to get things right. We don't bat 1,000, but we're trying very hard to get things right as we know them. So we'll see how that situation plays out. As usual, we thank you guys for watching and listening. For GT and Mark, I'm David, and we'll see you all next week.